Yo, what's up guys? Welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to talk something about the Donald Trump meeting with the new Prime Minister of Japan, Sanae Takaichi, right? There are so many benefits that bring about on the table to against CCP China, or, on the surface, they're not proclaiming, they're against CCP China, but actually one of the biggest agreement that they have is about the rare earth backup strategy. America will unite with Japan to develop the rare earth industry chain to especially to get more supply to the military needs of the rare. We are talking about two different types of rare earth, right? We have the light rare earth, we have the heavy rare earth. For the heavy rare earth, that's more for the military supply. So for example, for the battleship, for the aircraft, a lot of sensitive electronic element like that, radar, this and that, or some special kind of special steel or special military material, right? So for the heavy rare earth, that is the the dominating factor of the CCP Chinese military power and industry chain. But industry chain, not just for the heavy rare earth, right? But for the light rare earth, for the civilian level, that is also very strong. But America and Japan is forming an alliance. We're talking about the Japanese, rare earth reserve, and a place called Minami Torishima, something like that. Minami Torishima. In Chinese, we say Lanyao Dao. In Japanese, we say Minami Torishima, right? That's a island to the south of the Japanese homeland of the island. So that's the where we have a very deep reserve of the rare earth element, especially the heavy rare earth elements. So today I'm gonna analyze briefly about can America, along with Japan and Australia and some developed nations in the world, like Western democracy world, like G7 or G8, something like that, can we really fight against CCP Chinese for the dominance of the rare earth industry? And I'm not even talking about dominance at first, right? It's just about the safety for the supply chain, because if once you are at war with CCP China, what if they cut the rare earth supply? And boom, America and Japan and other developed nations is over, right? So now it's really wise to really plan about to develop the rare earth industry step by step. Not to really 100% rival the rare earth industry power of the Chinese, because they can produce a lot of cheap rare earth with high quality. They have very good technology. They don't care about people's health. They can pollute the air. Maybe they used to pollute the air a lot. Maybe now they have improved their technology. But whatever that is, they do have very cheap and reliable rare earth supply and rare earth industry chain, right? But how the rest of the world do about it, how we counterbalance their power, right? Today I'm going to talk briefly about it. So basically, here's the question, many people would ask. So they say, okay, Donald Trump is forming alliance with Sanae Takaichi, right? So to form that rare earth supply chain, America, Japan, rare earth supply chain, probably along with Australia, right? How can you replace CCP China's power in a rare earth industry? It's very hard, right? Because we know that Japan in a homeland, they don't have a lot of rare earth reserve, right? Especially on the land. Unlike China, China have a huge bunch of rare earths in, in some very remote region of China, like southwestern region of China and northeastern or some kind of northern part of China. In the desert, this and that, they have a lot of rare earth on these places, right? But they're on land. It's very easy to explore. It's very easy to mine them. It's very easy to filter. They've developed a very good technology for that. They have cheap labor, this and that. Okay, they have the country's support. How? Because the Japanese rare earth, most of the rare earth is in the deep sea, very deep in the sea. So it's very hard to explore that rare earth. It's very hard to extract material. It's very hard for the transportation and filtration, different kind of industry processing step, right? You have to do that step by step. You have to have a lot of creative minds. You have a lot of heavily investment, but finally your product cannot be compared with a cheap labor made in China. They can make that cheap, but with good quality. Can you compete with that? Okay. So, okay, I'm gonna say about this, right? This question is really on point, right? Japan does have rare earth supply, right? But many of this rare earth supply was buried deep in the sea, in the seabed, like 5 kilometers to 6 kilometers deep. We're talking about that. So it's very, very expensive to extract these rare earth, and but here's the problem. Here's my take on this question, right? We have 3 layers of analysis, right? The first one is that we're not trying to substitute the CCP China's rare earth supply chain all at once, all overnight. That's impossible, right? It's like at least we gotta show them we still have a deck of cards. We can, to some degree, counterbalance you. You're not trying to dominate us with your rare earth dominance in the world, right? So we possibly are also unite with other countries, for example, America united with Japan, America united with Australia, to try to find alternative, to give you a counter-strike, just like a CS game, counter-strike, right? So maybe we cannot compete with you for the moment, right? But at least in the foreseeable future, we're talking about next 5 years or next 10 years, we can have some supply to our military. The heavy rare earth, I'm not talking about a light rare earth, because the heavy rare earth is what really matters to the industry. That's where Japan is good at, right? Even though that's buried deep underground in the seabed. So the problem is that the CCP China, right? Not just they have the rare earth material, they have the rare earth reserve, pretty easy to be mined, right? They're just on the surface of the crust, right? Very superficial, right, on the land. And they can dig it, they can do the filtration process, they can refine, and then they can choke you, right? 卡你脖子, which means choke your neck. That's a Chinese metaphor, which means strangle you. Just trying to kill you slowly, something like that. So the problem is that the Chinese are very good, and not just the mining process, also the refining process and everything related, the derivatives, right? Different kinds of byproduct, and they have the whole complete light industry chain and heavy industry chain, not just for the civilian usage, also for the military usage. So basically in mainland China, in CCP China, they have 2 completely separated, yet completely complete industry chain. This is really horrible. Okay, this is really terrifying to the rest of the world. And now it's like, we have the deck of cards that even Beijing cut me off, right? Even you stop giving us rare earth, we have some certain degree of backup to know that at least our battleship were not in short of the rare earth material. Our aircraft or aircraft carriers were not in short of rare earth material. I'm not talking about a civilian usage, because maybe the rare earth reserve in Japan is not good enough. It's not, huge enough. Maybe it's not easy enough to extract. But at least we have a deck of cards. At least we do not worry about you cutting off, and we do not have nothing at all. So that's a kind of a card of assurance, right? That's kind of a confidential booster. Confident booster. Excuse my English. I've been English teacher in China for about 20 years, but when I come to America, most of the time I do not speak English that frequently. So that's pretty strange, right? I should speak more English then. So then one of the reasons why I'm doing this channel is because I also want to improve my English continuously, even after I'm staying in America right now, right? I still want to improve my English. So anyway. Okay, so the second layer is that it's just like a puzzling, just a repuzzling, reprogramming, regrouping. So it's not just about the Japanese rare earth industry alone, right? So like I said, the biggest Japanese rare earth reserve, that's in island called, which in English translation is called the South Bird Island, right? Minami Torishima, right? In the Minami Torishima, there are some sea bottom or seabed mud, something like that. And that's like 5,000 meters, like 5 km to 6 km deep. You have to use a massive vessel to suck it in, and then you have to do the filtration process, you have to do the separation process, this and that. And it's very, very costly. It's very, very environmentally unfriendly, okay? So, but the thing is that it's not just about relying on Japan, the only one country, right? We're talking about an alliance between Japan and USA and Australia, because now they are also trying to, Australia rare earth mining started again, right? Australia has been quitting on this program for decades, but now fear of CCP, China is rising to the throne, right? So Australia, along with some other Western democratic countries, restore its rare earth industry. Of course, it's on a much, much smaller scale compared with the scale of the Chinese, right? But at least that's a good start. So possibly maybe in the future, like Australia would be responsible for the land mines of the land mining of the rare earth material, and Japan will be responsible for the sea mining of the rare earth material, and America might be responsible for the separation process or the byproduct or the final production to the like military industry level of products, things like that. Maybe you're assisting in transporting and branding and rebranding this and that. So anyway, this is pretty complicated, but to some degree, somehow, Japan, America, and Australia might form a kind of rare earth alliance, from the Western civilization. Well, even Japan is the Eastern world, right? Japanese Asian people look like me, look like us. But the thing is that their culture, their modern culture, belong to the Western democracy, right? Anyway, so basically they will form that kind of alliance, right? And then they would kind of form an anti-CCP rare earth supply chain. How genius is that, right? How great is that? I think that would check a balance to CCP. That's a slap on the CCP's face, which I really like. Strangely, I'm Chinese. I should love China, but yes, I love China, but I do not like CCP. That's I want away from CCP. That's it. So that's the second layer, right? Second layer is to form an international anti-CCP Western Democratic Rare Earth Alliance. Okay? To go against CCP. And the third layer of this analysis is that it's actually the heavy rare earth that is more important to the military industry, right? Because the light rare earth is something for the, for example, for the cell phone or for the, for the computer, for the laptop or desktop, whatever that is, for the camera or for something, right? But for the tanks, right? For the battleship or some kind of missile, guidance system, GPS system, this and that, drones, right? A lot of advanced stuff for the military technology. That should be for the heavy rare earth materials. For example, the Minami Tonishima, right? That Japanese South Torii bird, the South bird island, right? They have a lot of heavy one. They have a lot of heavy rare earth material. Like DY and CB, right? They are very good for the permanent magnets, right? And a lot of high power engines, electronic high power military engines and submarine, something kind of booster, this and that, propeller, and these are very important for the military industry, right? So basically, the Minami Tonishima, don't get me wrong, right? Minami Tonishima is very good for the heavy rare earth material. That is perfect for the military industry, but not have enough light rare earth material. But light rare earth material is not the most important thing for the national defense, right? For the national defense, the heavy rare earth material plays more of an important role. So at least America and Japan can be, to some degree, a little bit relieved about they are not worrying about having no tanks. They're not worrying about having no submarines at all after China possibly cut them off for the rare earth supply, right? Maybe the amount of supply cannot be compared with what China had originally supplied, but at least they have some degree of substitution. The human technology always develops, right? So what if in the next decade, maybe we have another element that is more important than rare earth, right? What if America has a huge reserve? It doesn't matter because now we just need a transitional phrase, right? We need a stage, we need a kind of mentality to say, hey, CCP, yeah, I'm not afraid of you. At least we have a certain degree of substitution, maybe not as as good as what you've been supplying me with, but at least I'm not entirely deprived of my rare earth rights if you cut me off. You know what I mean? So that's what I call today's, the title is rare earth backup. Rare earth backup strategy, right? Does that work? Well, I don't know whether that will be 100% working. However, I wish that well. And that might be the only solution if you do not want to be brought down by the CCP Chinese, right? Because CCP is being acting tough. The Li Chenggang guy, acting tough on Scott Bessent. And so I'm also looking forward because, Sanae Takaichi is being pretty welcoming, have a highly welcoming gesture to Donald Trump. That's a good sign, right? But let's wait and see because Donald Trump is playing around with all these politicians, right? Of course, in a good way, he's not betraying his Japanese alliance. The thing is that, let's see, he's trying to collect a deck of cards, right? And he's playing blackjack with Xi Jinping. Let's watch and see. Okay, see you guys tomorrow. Bye-bye.